Stop waiting. Start becoming. Welcome to Becoming with Beck, the podcast for those ready to shift their mindset, lead themselves, and manifest intentionally. If you know you're meant for more, you're in the right place. Let's begin.
Hello and welcome back to Becoming with Beck. I'm your host, Beck Robinson, and thank you so much for joining me today. What if the life you want isn't something you have to build from scratch? What if it already exists? What if right now, in this moment, there is a version of you who has the relationship, the business, the home, the health, the peace, the abundance that you are working toward? A version of you who made slightly different choices, held a slightly different belief about themselves, moved through the world with just a little more trust, and arrived somewhere extraordinary. And what if your job isn't to create that life, but to tune into it? Today, we're exploring one of the most mind-expanding concepts in both quantum physics and spiritual philosophy. The idea of multiple timelines. The idea that at any given moment, infinite versions of your future exist simultaneously as pure potential waiting to be chosen. This is not science fiction. This is not wishful thinking. This is a concept that sits at the intersection of cutting-edge physics, ancient spiritual wisdom, and the very practical work of identity transformation that we explore on this podcast. And by the end of this episode, I want you to look at the choices you make today, even the small ones, through an entirely different lens. Let's go. Let's start with the science because I think it's important to ground this concept in something real before we move into the expansive territory. In quantum physics, one of the most significant and well-documented phenomenon is what's called the superposition principle. At the subatomic level, the level of electrons, photons, and all the fundamental building blocks of matter, particles do not exist in one fixed state. They exist in multiple states simultaneously, all at once. Every possibility present at the same time, until they are observed. The moment a particle is observed, the moment consciousness interacts with it, it collapses out of a superposition and into one specific measurable reality. One outcome chosen from the infinite field of what was possible. This is not a theory. This is one of the most replicated findings in the history of scientific inquiry. The observer effect is real. Consciousness participates in the creation of reality at the most fundamental level of existence. Reality is not fixed and waiting to be discovered. It is fluid and responsive, shaped in part by where you place your attention and what you believe is possible. Now, and this is where it gets really interesting, some of the most respected physicists in history have taken this principle and extended it to a much larger scale. Hugh Everett's many worlds interpretation, proposed in 1957, suggests that every time a quantum event occurs, every time a particle could go one way or another, the universe actually branches. Both outcomes happen. Two timelines emerge, and this branching is happening constantly at every level of reality, producing an almost incomprehensible number of parallel universes, each one real, each one containing a version of events that played out differently. Now, I want to be transparent here. The many worlds interpretation is a theory, not a settled scientific consensus. Physicists debate it vigorously, but what's remarkable is the number of serious, credentialed scientists who take it seriously. It is not fringe thinking, it is a legitimate framework through which some of the greatest minds in physics understand the nature of reality. And whether or not you take it literally, whether or not you believe there are actual parallel universes branching off with every decision, the physiological and practical implications are extraordinary. What if your future already exists in multiple versions as pure potential? What if the question is not whether the abundant, aligned, fully expressed version of your life is possible, but simply which version of yourself you are choosing to be right now in the order to arrive there? That reframe alone changes everything. What I find compelling about the timelines concept is that it isn't new. Quantum physics has given us a language and the mathematics for something that spiritual traditions have been pointing at for thousands of years. Neville Goddard, whose work underpins so much of what we explore on this podcast, wrote extensively about what he called the infinite nature of reality and the power of assumption. He taught that every state of being, every version of yourself, every version of your life already exists, not as a future possibility, but as a present reality in consciousness waiting to be inhabited. He said, assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled. Don't reach toward your desired reality from a place of longing. Step into it. Occupy it. Be it now. In Neville's framework, shifting timelines is not about doing more or trying harder. It's about changing your state of being. Your assumptions about yourself and your life are, in his words, the only thing determining which version of reality you experience. The world is yourself pushed out. Change yourself, your assumptions, your identity, your emotional state, and the world you experience must change with it. This maps almost perfectly onto the quantum physics framework. The observer collapses the wave function. Your consciousness, your beliefs, your identity, your emotional signature determines which potential reality becomes your lived experience. Eastern philosophy has also long held a version of this truth. The concept of Maya in Hindu philosophy, often translated as illusion, doesn't mean the world isn't real. It means the world as we perceive it is a construct, shaped by the lens of our consciousness. Change the lens and the world changes. Buddhism speaks of dependent origination, the idea that nothing exists independently, that all phenomena arise in relationship to the mind that perceives them. You are not a passive observer of a fixed reality. You are an active participant in its creation. Science and spirituality arriving from completely different directions, landing in the same place. The version of your life that you most deeply desire is not out there somewhere waiting to be earned. It is a state of being available to you now through the power of consciousness, your identity, and your choice. Okay, I love the theory. I genuinely love it. But I know what you're here for is the practical. So let's bring this all the way down to earth. If multiple timelines exist, if infinite versions of your future are available to you as potential right now, then how do you actually choose the one you want? How do you shift? How do you tune your frequency to the life you are calling in? Here's what I believe, drawing from both the science and the spiritual frameworks. You don't jump to a new timeline. You become the version of yourself who is already living it. That's the mechanism. That's the how. Not effort, not striving, not earning your way through hustle, but identity, becoming, collapsing the distance between who you are now and who you need to be to inhabit the life you want. 1. Your decisions are timeline selectors. Every decision you make, every single one, including the ones that almost feel too small to matter, is a timeline selection. When you choose to speak to yourself with compassion instead of criticism, you are selecting a timeline. When you choose to take the aligned action instead of waiting until you feel ready, you are selecting a timeline. When you choose to believe in your vision on the days it feels impossible, you are selecting a timeline. And when you choose the familiar, the comfortable, the contracted, the same as yesterday, you are also selecting a timeline. One that looks a lot like the one you're already on. This is not meant to create anxiety about every choice. It's meant to create awareness, to help you understand that the aggregate of your daily decisions is not neutral. It is directional. It is always moving you toward a version of your future or another. Ask yourself regularly, is this decision coming from the person I am or the person I am becoming? Your identity is your tuning fork. In physics, resonance is a phenomenon where one vibrating object causes another object of the same frequency to vibrate in response. A tuning fork struck in a room will cause other tuning forks of the same pitch to hum without touching them. Your identity works in the same way. The version of yourself you are being, your beliefs, your emotional state, your self-concept, the assumptions you hold about what's possible for you is broadcasting a frequency. And the timeline you are on is always in resonance with that frequency. This is why surface level changes so rarely produce lasting results. You can change your habits, your environment, your relationships, but if the underlying identity hasn't shifted, the frequency hasn't changed. And the patterns, the limitations, the same ceiling will follow you wherever you go. The timeline shifts when the identity shifts, not before. You cannot access a new timeline from the same frequency that created your current one. The shift is always internal first. Your emotional state is your GPS. Here is one of the most practical tools I want to give you today. At any given moment, the emotional state you are living in is a direct signal of which timeline you are on, and more precisely, which version of yourself you are being. When you feel expansive, clear, trusting, grateful, alive, you are in resonance with your highest timeline. You are being the version of yourself who belongs to the life you are creating. When you feel contracted, fearful, small, stuck, undeserving, you are slipped back into an older version of yourself, an older frequency, an older timeline. Neither state is permanent. Neither state is who you are. They are signals. They are feedback. They are your inner GPS telling you in real time which version of yourself you are currently inhabiting. And the moment you notice the contraction, the moment you become aware that you have drifted, you have the power to choose again, to breathe, to choose to shift your state, to return to the frequency of the person you are becoming. This is the practice, not a dramatic, once and for all transformation, but a constant, gentle, compassionate returning again and again and again to the highest version of yourself that you can access right now. I want to leave you with something you can actually use, a simple framework for working with this concept in your day-to-day life. Step 1, get clear on the timeline you are choosing, not in vague terms, in specific felt embodied terms. What does the life on your highest timeline actually look, feel, and sound like? Who are you with in that life? What do you believe about yourself? How do you move through the world? Get as detailed as you possibly can, because vague intentions produce vague realities. Step 2, identify the version of yourself who lives in that timeline. This is the identity work. Who is she? What does she think about when she wakes up in the morning? What does she say yes to? What does she say no to? How does she handle setbacks? What does she believe is possible? Write it down. Name her. Know her. Because she is not a fantasy. She is the future version of you that already exists in the field of potential. Step 3, make decisions from her, not toward her. This is the shift that changes everything. Stop making decisions as a person you are now hoping to become her eventually. Start making decisions as her now, today, with what you have. Ask in every moment, what would she do? How would she respond? What would she choose? And then choose that, even before it feels completely natural, especially before it feels completely natural. Step 4, use your emotional state as your compass. Check in throughout the day. Notice where you are. When you feel expanded, lean in. Stay there as long as you can. Let it anchor in your nervous system. When you feel contracted, don't judge it. Just notice it and gently redirect. Back to your breath, back to gratitude, back to the identity of a woman who is already living your highest timeline. You are not trying to get somewhere. You are practicing being someone. And every moment is an opportunity to begin again. And here's what I want you to sit with after today. The life you want is not a distant possibility that you have to earn your way toward. It is a reality that already exists in the quantum field, in the infinite potential of this present moment, waiting for you to become the version of yourself who inhabits it. The timelines are real. The potential is real. And the version of you who is already living your most aligned, abundant, fully expressed life, she is real too. She is not out there somewhere. She is here. She is in the next choice you make. She is the thought you choose to think when the old ones come knocking. She is the way you speak to yourself when no one is watching. She is the action you take even when the fear is loud. She is closer than you think. She has always been closer than you think. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. And if this episode opened something up for you, if it shifted even one thing in the way that you see your life and your choices, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. And come find me on Instagram. I will link it below. What timeline are you choosing? I genuinely want to know. And be sure to leave a review as this supports my podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I will talk to you in the next episode. Bye.